I've never been in one of these theaters, but if you hear a guy grunting like that in the back row of a porn theater, you do not go over and talk to him.
Not just talk to him, but like awkwardly stand in the aisle and watch. Get away!
Get away!
Don't
I'm about
watch!
to come. Get away! Get away!
It's happening.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat The Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, then this is the podcast for you. I'm one of your hosts, Gene Lyons, and alongside me are my co-hosts, Ash, the Slaughtered Lamb Kessler.
Hi, y'all.
And Big D, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week, we take a look back in time and decide if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, or want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatthemovies.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie would take to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and share with a friend. That's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, Lovecraft Country, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, and Watchmen. Find all that information and past episodes at shatontv.com. And finally, to hang out with us live all week long, follow and subscribe to our Twitch channel, shatthemovies.com/Twitch, where we play video games, host watch parties, and have live podcast edits. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, tonight we are going to go back to the very early days for one of our wonderful supporters, Rob T. from Colston, England, and he wanted us to strap on our backpacks and head out into the moors to review the 1981 horror comedy classic, An American Werewolf in London.
And Rob wrote in and said, "Hey, Shat Crew, I've been listening for a couple of years now and wanted to commission an episode of my own to help repay the hours of entertainment you've given me. I've been housebound for most of that time due to brain and back injuries, so the weekly dose of Shat has become a major part of my life. Something to look forward to, laugh at, and sometimes write back with crazy theories, such as The Thing, as I am always coming up with answers to questions asked. The movie I've chosen was among the first 5 I ever saw on our old Betamax. All were horror movies, but while Carrie, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Alien didn't faze me, American Werewolf in London was the first to really freak me out. For the longest time, I couldn't hear Blue Moon without thinking of it in the terrifying transformation and underground scene. Today, it is a classic, rightly looked at as a breakthrough for practical effects. Although its director is somewhat a difficult person to like, I love this quirky, funny, scary, and very British look at the Wolfman. Thank you all again for the entertainment, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Rob Taylor from Colchester, England."
So Rob, in addition to being a commissioner, has become a dear friend of the podcast. He hangs out with us on Discord. He hangs out with us on Twitch. And last week, while I was editing Ravenous, episode 256 of Shat The Movies, Rob started getting an idea for a jingle in his head, and he busted out his new Yeti mic and took it out for its maiden voyage to record this.
Feeling sick, I'm a liquor. In a trap, I'm legless. But not for long, the blood keeps flowing on. It's flowing on, it's flowing on, it's flowing on.
An American Werewolf in London is a 1981 horror comedy written and directed by John Landis. An international co-production of the United Kingdom and the United States, the film follows 2 American backpackers, David and Jack, who are attacked by a werewolf while traveling in England, causing David to question whether he'll become a werewolf under the next full moon. Landis wrote the first draft of the screenplay for the film in 1969 and shelved it for over a decade. Studios felt the script was too frightening to be a comedy and too humorous to be a horror film. After achieving success in Hollywood with the comedies The Kentucky Fried Movie, National Lampoon's Animal House, and The Blues Brothers, Landis was able to secure financing from Polygram Pictures to produce An American Werewolf in London. It was released in the U.S. by Universal Pictures on August 21st, 1981, and was a critical and commercial success, winning the 1981 Saturn Award for Best Horror Film and the first ever Academy Award for Best Makeup. Since its release, it has become a cult classic, and a sequel, An American Werewolf in Paris, was released by Hollywood Pictures in 1997. So Big D, Ash, we always ask where you were and what your memories are of the movie we're covering. Big D, we'll start with you. What are your memories of An American Werewolf in London?
So I'm almost certain that this was a late night HBO watch when my parents fell asleep. We first got HBO, early 80s. And I keep mixing this up, though, because of the subject matter with the other 1981 werewolf movie, The Howling. They both equally terrified me to where I would cover myself with a pillow. I would kind of look through my fingers. It was scary. But these movies also had naked women. So that enticed me enough to suffer through the horror and the terror and under that pillow for those sex scenes. But this was a terrifying moment when I was young.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this movie as a kid, like probably like 10 or 11, and I remember loving everything about it. I was not, upon rewatch, expecting the special effects to have held up, but when I originally saw it, I had never seen anything like the scene where he turns into the werewolf for the first time ever before. And that's what I think for a lot of people, this movie kind of stands out the most for them, is that scene. And here's the deal. As far as werewolves go, they're not my favorite creatures, but if I'm going to watch a werewolf movie, it's going to be this one. And I've always been a big Landis fan. I love Animal House. I love the Blues Brothers, but this one, I mean, y'all, this one's so good. So thank you, Rob. This is an absolutely amazing commission.
Yeah, I don't know why I'd never seen this movie before. And I think it's starting this unfortunate trend where I'm like the guy on the podcast who hasn't seen the movie before. And it doesn't make sense because I like werewolves. I like London. I'm a massive Anglophile. I like eccentric movie titles. I like John Landis. And I even like Warren Zevon's Werewolves of London, even though most of his catalog is absolute garbage. So I want to thank Rob for this commission because unlike last week, this is a movie that I hadn't seen that I'm really glad I got to watch. Big D, without further ado, let's hit that trailer.
This is the story of two young American students traveling through England on the night of the full moon.
Did you hear that?
I heard that.
What was it?
Could be a lot of things.
Fate let one live.
That lunatic must have been a very fierce fellow.
Wasn't a lunatic.
What?
A wolf.
Oh, be serious, would you?
And now everything is changing. Changing. Changing.
Good Lord.
John Landis, the brilliant young director of Animal House and the Blues Brothers, has turned a classic tale of terror into something new. Something different.
Excuse me.
A naked American man stole my balloon.
I'm a werewolf.
An American Werewolf in London. Something different.
American backpackers David Kessler and Jack Goodman stop at a Yorkshire pub called the Slaughtered Lamb. When Jack asks about a 5-pointed star on the wall, the pubgoers become hostile. The pair decide to leave, and the pubgoers warn them to keep on the road, stay clear of the moors, and beware of the full moon. David and Jack soon are attacked by an unseen creature. Jack is killed and David is injured. The beast is shot and killed by some of the pubgoers, but instead of a dead animal, David sees the corpse of a naked man lying next to him before passing out.
Now, on Ravenous, I complained about tone issues and about whether or not you could tell if it was supposed to be a horror movie or if it was supposed to be a comedy or if it was supposed to be both. And I would argue that Landis could give a masterclass in how to set the tone for a horror comedy, because when this movie opens up with the song Blue Moon playing over the credits, it's perfect. You see the English countryside, you know it's a werewolf movie, and they don't have to waste time wondering if the audience is going to get that the tone is both scary and funny. Because here's the deal, guys. Not everybody realizes that Nietzsche's name is spelled wrong in Ravenous. Most people are like, is it? Here, though, everybody gets, all right, this is going to be funny. This is going to be a fun ride. And it doesn't stop with the blue moon, because you get Van Morrison's Moon Dance, you get Creedence Clearwater Revival's Bad Moon Rising. And if Landis had had his way, it would have kept going, because he unsuccessfully got Cat Stevens's rights to Moon Shadow, because Stevens actually apparently believed werewolves were real and he didn't want to mock them. And he also didn't get Bob Dylan's Blue Moon cover, because Bob Dylan was like, no, I don't like the occult, and for like some sort of religious reason. So we could have had more, but I love what we get. And the tonality just feels good.
Ash, when you started talking about tonality, I was hoping you were going to talk about how Jack and David have this natural rapport and like the funny, cool conversations that go on between them are the kind of conversations dudes just have. Like, you're going to hook up with her, or you're not? Like, it just felt like normal dudes talking while out backpacking. But instead, you focused on the music. I got to disagree here, because according to you, the key to getting the tone right is just feature old man rock songs that feature moon in the title. How does that work?
Yep. No, hold on. This is 1981. Yes, it's old man rock music, but at the time, it makes sense. I love the music. Yes, I know some of it's older than 1980, but to me, other than the fact that it's right on the nose with the plot, everything's moon, 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 I felt it set the tone. We got these two regular dudes. They're out backpacking. This is their soundtrack. This is the shit they would have on their Spotify list as they're walking through the English countryside.
Now, clearly this movie is better than Ravenous. I wouldn't focus on the comedy. I would focus more on the horror. This movie is funnier than Ravenous by a bit, but it's scarier than Ravenous by a lot. That opening attack that we get, like, it changes things very quickly. All the werewolf attacks, they're so smart. They're so suspenseful. I was literally on the edge of my seat from a movie that was made in 1981. I was leaning toward the screen in suspense, trying to look out into that darkness. And they use that dark to keep you guessing, like, where's the monster going to come from? They're in an open field, and you have no idea where the werewolf is going to appear. And unlike Titanic, Landis here didn't feel the need to show us a CGI running werewolf. And when we do see David as a werewolf, he looks great.
Well, he couldn't do that. He didn't have that as an option. He might have done it. Okay, let's not give Landis credit for something he couldn't have done.
I mean, they had claymation, and he didn't try that.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Stop motion.
I do want to give this caveat. As I'm watching this, I did not know this was a horror comedy. I only remember being terrified as a kid. So the comedy bit is kind of, I'm missing it for the first half.
The title didn't give it away?
No, why? It's an American Werewolf in London. Hey.
And the blue moon playing over the credits?
Listen, we're 6 minutes in here. Give me some space, people, okay? But we get the attack, and David, he's an asshole. His first instinct is to run. There's no hesitation. There's no thinking, oh, that's my friend. It's back to that old, that old adage where you don't need to be the fastest. You just don't need to be the slowest with a bear attack. Jack screams, help, 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 before David actually goes, okay, I'm going to turn around. I'm going to check on my friend. I kept hoping that as we get the increasingly decaying corpse of Jack, that at some point he'd give him some shit. He'd be like, come on, man. You didn't even stop for me. You didn't even turn around. But it just doesn't.
I guess we react to Beasts of the Wild a bit differently, Big D. I love you guys both. I genuinely do. But if we were being attacked by a wolf, my instinct would be to keep running. Like, what the fuck am I going to do? I got a backpack. I'm unarmed against a huge ass wolf. Like, I give David credit for returning at all, because he comes to his senses and turns around and is like, shit, it's my friend. But if you're screaming help, help, and Ash and I are booking it, we're going to keep booking it. I'm sorry, man. And I would expect the same of you two.
This would be a great time to assess the danger, Gene, and maybe close the distance and go after him as he's busy eating.
I've assessed the danger. A man-sized wolf has come out of the woods upright and is eating you. So I am running as far as I can to not be eaten myself. I'm with Gene on this one.
Yeah, and going back to this hypothetical scenario, Big D, you're the best equipped to fight a wolf. So we're going to keep going.
Yeah. We thank you for your sacrifice.
Like, if it was Ash, I might turn around. I go, Ash might not be the biggest and most imposing of us against a wolf. You're doing fine. Maybe that David's like, hey, Jack's tougher than I am. I'm going to keep going.
Do that thing where you put your arms above your head and growl at it real loud. Like, you do that, and Gene and I will just run off.
If it's brown, lay down. If it's black, attack. No, this
wolf was brown. So what are you going to do? You're just going to lay down. We're running. You lay down.
And if it's where, get out of there.
Yeah. The only way that you said I'm the best suited to deal with this is that I'm the largest meal. That you think once he eats me, the wolf is going to sit there and actually hunker down, drag me to some cave, and I will feed him through the winter.
I would argue I'm more agile than both of you, so I feel like I'm going to live in this scenario. So I'm good. But I have a question, though. I've traveled all over Europe, but we always had transport, right? Like we always took a train or we, caught a ride with somebody. We never walked with literal backpacks from like pub to pub in werewolf country. But that aside, I blame the pub people here. I think it's the pub people's fault that they get killed. Who kicks out arguably dumb American backpackers who know nothing about the legitimacy of werewolves? And I think they're assholes. They're like, stick to the road. Like, what shitty advice? Like, the wolves can't go on the road. They can't run onto the road. And also, why aren't you tightening your own security on the full moon nights? Like, you'd think that, okay, I know there's a werewolf out there. Why would I be at home, locking my doors, not drinking casually in the pub? And further, every other werewolf movie, we get that scene where the werewolf tries to like chain itself in a basement room and not be able to get out. If you know you have werewolves, why aren't you just locking these motherfuckers up every full moon? Like, why are you letting them roam the moors?
I think this is sort of a Shaun of the Dead situation, though, where the pub is like the safe place. Like, it's clearly a protected space. They've got the 5-pointed star. They got the candles up. These people know how to deal with werewolves. It's like a part of their local lore. I didn't see the Slaughtered Lamb as a place that was full of people afraid of werewolves. I think it was full of people who don't want their town's dark secret exposed. But sticking to the road, that's good advice. The Americans just don't follow it.
No, without a doubt. I'm a kid of the 80s. I read Hound of the Baskervilles. I know what happens out in the foggy moor. I fucking know that. I listened to the Smiths. I didn't need Morrissey to sing more about the Moor murders from the 60s. I know. Forget about werewolves. There's crazy people out there who are going to stick to the road. But, Ash, not every werewolf has a problem being a werewolf. They don't need to chain themselves up. Some people like it. And all of these werewolves, I think, are fellow members of the community. If they had spilled it out, oh, no, don't go out there. There's werewolves. Some of them are probably influential members of the community, maybe the police, maybe the wealthy. If they had done that, oh, don't go out there, chaps. There's werewolves. You guys would be screaming bullshit and complaining.
I just appreciate that you said I'm a child of the 80s. I've read the Hounds of Baskerville, which came out in 1902. Like, you act like Sherlock Holmes was like writing in the late 70s.
Talk about the Smiths more.
I also question these people's motives here after David is attacked. Like, you know what's going to happen to David. You know he's going to turn into a werewolf. So why not just kill him? Like, you have no problem killing the wolf that just killed Jack, but why not David? Their rules make no sense to me because you have the ability to stop this wolf problem from escalating. And we find out by the ghost of his friend, the ghost of Jack, we find out that he's the last of the bloodline. So if they had just shot him right there, you don't have a problem. Again, pub people, assholes.
I think the issue that they'd run into is, okay, so you got Jack's dead body, and that's explainable because you're like, oh, the psychopath killed him. And then you got the dead psycho, like the actual werewolf, and that you can explain because you shot him for killing Jack and attacking David. But if you got two guys who were shot and then one guy that's mauled, now what's your story?
Yeah, it's like Heather's. It's that love triangle. You can't explain 3 dead bodies. It becomes kind of strange. And listen, they tried to save him. They did. It took them a while to get there, but they tried to save him. At this point, you can justify it. Oh, we tried to save those chaps. Now it's England. It's London's problem. Or even better, they're going to send it back to the States. We tried. We did the right thing.
Anyone from Northern England right now is so offended by the fact that you're applying a London accent, a royal accent, to the people of Northern England. We apologize, everyone. Rob, especially. We're so sorry. Well, David wakes up 3 weeks later in a hospital in London. He's interviewed by a police inspector who tells him that he and Jack were attacked by an escaped lunatic. An undead Jack appears to David and explains the beast that killed them was a werewolf. Jack urges David to kill himself because Jack is cursed to linger undead for as long as the bloodline of the werewolf that attacked him survives. Dr. Hirsch interviews the pub goers who deny any knowledge of the attack. However, one distraught pub goer speaks to Dr. Hirsch outside the pub and says David should not have been taken away and that everyone else will be in danger when he transforms. So Rob talked about how this is a very English movie, and I got to agree that you can tell this isn't an American movie, or at least not a solely American movie. English comedy, the English sense of humor, it's all in nuance. It's when Nurse Price asks a child, "Have you ever been beaten about the face and neck?" "I thought not." It's a little schoolboy, coming out after seeing David running around naked and saying, "A naked American man stole my balloons." And they even go so far as to make the Americans look like goofy outsiders, which I really appreciated. Like, for example, like Frank Oz is in this movie as the American ambassador, Mr. Collins, which I'm pretty sure was the inspiration for Tobias Funke. And you just look at all the Americans, they talk funny, they act funny, they're so rigid and goofy. And I really appreciated that.
The British, they are the perfect victims in horror movies. They are so damn proper. "Oh, I shall report you to the authorities. This is not funny. You're giving me a proper scare." Later, when the people come out and the wife's like, "Hey, go check out. There's something going on in the park." They're perfect. Americans, the meathead, "Yeah, fuck yeah. I ain't going out there." But in England, they're perfectly willing just to walk out into a dark, scary place where someone was just screaming.
Do you think that has something to do with the fact that they've actually been attacked on their soil repeatedly?
No, the Taliban's not hiding in the fucking dark woods. You heard somebody screaming. It's just they're afraid to offend someone. "Oh, put that knife away. That is, oh, no, you're stabbing me now." They're so nice.
I love that Big D's England is just medieval times. Do you think they attack each other with lances and falcons and spells?
"I shall slap you with my glove." Give me a proper scare.
Well, I have to say that Jack, I personally think, is the best character in this movie. And when Jack shows up for the first time and he starts talking about his funeral, he's absolutely hilarious. And y'all, this makeup is incredible. I now feel so stupid for saying that those skeletons look slimy and fun and ravenous, because those skeletons look like, a weekend craft project at my house compared to what we have here. Because those pieces of flesh that are hanging from his face that I so badly, my type A, I just wanted to go and yank it off because it kept wiggling at me. I thought that it was absolutely incredible. And the practical effects of Jack's wounds, I think they look as good today as they did in 1981. And I think that they spent all the money on Jack, and then David's got scars on his face that look like Halloween makeup that you and I would do. It's like they had absolutely no budget left. And especially the ones on his chest, it's like they're drawn on by a Sharpie and then kind of wiped away. But Baker still won an Oscar, as we talked about, for his work, and it landed Landis and Baker the work on the Thriller video that Michael Jackson would do the same year in 1981. And fun fact, the now disgraced King of Pop had a similar religious reaction to Bob Dylan when he saw the final product of the Thriller video, and he was worried that it would make it look like he supported the occult. And so it aired with that disclaimer at the beginning that was Michael Jackson does not support the occult. Now please enjoy Thriller.
Jack as a character also makes such an important impact in this film, because in almost every other werewolf tale we get, it's just like you said, the dude's like, "Oh, I'm going to chain myself up. Don't let me out of my cage, blah, blah, blah." And you're like, well, okay, cool. So that's a pretty manageable condition relative to other types of, monster. If you're a zombie, you got some serious fucking problems. If you're a vampire, you got some serious fucking problems. If you're a werewolf, it's like, okay, cool. Just chain me up one night every lunar cycle and we're going to be fine. Here, Jack adds that reason for the werewolf to kill himself. He's like, dude, I'm fucking decaying. I'm suffering here. And every other person you kill has too. That's such a critical part of this movie, and really added a new dimension to the werewolf tale that we hadn't seen before.
And Gene, you're right. This only works because that opening sequence, the dialogue, they're talking like two guys talk. They're talking like two regular friends. So it makes sense that the undead Jack talks the same way that the normal Jack talked. And it makes sense why, even though David's scared, he still knows I'm really dealing with my friend who's now back in some decaying corpse.
The one thing I wish we had seen, though, I guess there's a cut scene where Jack is eating a piece of toast and it like falls through his wound. And they, I guess audiences didn't react well to it. So they like cut that from the movie. But God, that would have been glorious. I mean, you put in the work. Let us see it. Director's cut?
Maybe it at least would have gotten that stupid hanging down piece because I can't tell y'all. Ugh, hated it.
Made me hungry. Well, upon his release from the hospital, David moves in with Alex Price, a young nurse who grew infatuated with him in the hospital, and they have sex. Jack, in a more advanced stage of decay, confronts David to warn him that he will become a werewolf the next night. When the full moon rises, David painfully transforms from his human form into a werewolf. He prowls the streets in the London Underground, killing and slaughtering 6 people in the process. He wakes up the next morning naked on the floor of a wolf enclosure at the London Zoo with no recollection of what happened and makes his way back to Alex's flat. So Ash, you talked about David's makeup, how his face was just barely scarred and he had just a little scratch on his chest. And I think that's because they didn't want to fuck with the fact that David is pretty hot. Like, this is a good looking dude. He's built. And that kind of explains why Nurse Price might be attracted to him. But I don't understand why Nurse Price, who bears a striking resemblance to our own Carrie Gross, thinks taking David home and fucking him is a good idea. Like, dude is clearly nuts. He's clutching at the walls of his hospital room. He's screaming. He's asking her all kinds of questions. He believes he's a werewolf. And I think that this movie just perpetuates this like horrible trend. And I feel so bad for nurses because they're constantly getting hit on by patients. A lot of these dudes are like total perverts. They probably haven't talked to an attractive young lady in years. And I can't help but feel for them having to spend time in physical proximity with and alone with gross dudes.
Okay, so listen, my mother's Swedish. I've dealt with socialized medicine. Sweden, it's wonderful. But here, I'm scared for the National Health Services. The NHS, the medical staff seems a bit substandard. We get the orderly who's basically like, that's not my job. I just push stuff around. You got the doctor who's kind of supportive, but I don't know. He kind of lets David, where he should be taking care of him better, doesn't. You get Nurse Gallagher. She violates poor David. She's joking that she looked at his uncircumcised penis while he was asleep. And now Alex, on the other hand, hot. She is hot, but equally damaged. But I can understand why she would want to take David home. If you look at the British options, David is a beefcake compared to this lot of pug ugly Brits.
Dr. Hirsch is a fucking war veteran and very handsome, I think. But in America, Big D, you're lucky to see a doctor at all. Like, you thought the orderlies were surly? I thought they were chummy and fucking cool. The nurses, they sit down, they read to you if you don't want to be alone. They fucking spoon feed you. Dr. Hirsch drives out to the countryside to validate David's claim that a werewolf attacked him. This is great healthcare.
Yeah, but you know that this is not the first person that Alex has taken home. She gives us that I've slept with 7 people line. That's horseshit. If somebody tells you how many people they slept with, they're lying. This is her regular thing.
And Nurse Price taking David home gives us this very like moment of truth kind of scene. David is doing what any of us would do left in someone else's apartment with no internet. He's checking the fridge. He's grabbing a book. He's trying to nap. He's walking around. He's, watching TV, checks the fridge again, but he's not hungry. He's just bored. When I've hooked up with people, it's been in like Mesa, Arizona, right? Or like Schaumburg, Illinois. David's in London. And he's a backpacker. Why the fuck does he not go for a stroll, go get a meal, go visit a museum? Or if you think you might be a werewolf, I don't know, go do some werewolf research?
But why the fuck was Alex so embarrassed to take David back to her flat? She's like, oh, I don't know if I could take you back. I'm sorry. This is my place. This is just... That apartment's glorious. That location is perfect if you want to conduct a killing spree. It's close to the underground. It's close to the park. It's close to the zoo. I would be like, hey, everybody come by. That place was the bomb.
I think it's because the British think we're all Houston rich.
Oh, my God.
Like they think that we all live in giant houses with gated lakes
communities.
And go alpine skiing and all that stuff.
That's true.
Her place is great. I agree.
Right.
She has her own shower. She has a big bedroom. She has a kitchen. She has a living room. And she's living in London. That's pretty nice. I mean, that's bigger than my living space.
I don't know. I have to say, I really appreciated again that we didn't get that typical scene like I was talking about where the guy locks himself up. We also didn't get the scene where David's like at the library, like, I need all of your books on lunar happenings. Like, I mean, we even get that in like the Twilight movies. Like she drives to Seattle or something to go get that book. So
I should point out at this juncture that a lot of this, like David having to sneak back into the apartment, him being like uncomfortable and kind of bored in her space, being uncircumcised and all that. David is a Jewish character, and there is actually a train of thought. Like the entire movie is about being Jewish and being othered in Anglo society. So,
I think that alone's going to get us a 2-star. That's.
You're just too woke. Well, allegorical or not, let's talk about the transformation. Because when I was a kid, that scene of him becoming a wolf scared the shit out of me. And I was so excited about watching it. And one of the things I had forgotten is exactly kind of what you're describing, Gene. He's just like walking around doing nothing. He's all of a sudden like he goes from being like normal to like, my head, I'm on fire, and like ripping his clothes off. Like it comes absolutely out of nowhere. And what I like about what this movie does is it cannot feel good to transform into a wolf. And they show that it probably sucks to transform into a wolf. And so Landis has built this incredible tension throughout the movie. He makes you wait almost an entire hour before you get to see David as a werewolf, but he makes you know that at some point it's going to happen. You just don't know what it's going to look like. And so when it does happen, unlike a lot of other movies, like Stephen King films where like what's in your head is a lot cooler than what he's going to show you on screen, I think it's the opposite here. This winds up being so much more disturbing than anything you could have imagined. And I don't think that there is a better transformation scene for a werewolf prior or after this. And some of the special effects, specifically like when his hand grows, like that didn't really hold up. But the rest of it, like when his bones are breaking and when he starts to break out into all that hair, like it's so good. And just so everybody knows, this werewolf look, a total of 10 hours of makeup for them to get it right, which is nuts, but I thought it looked amazing.
I don't think it looks dated at all. I was cringing and clapping, and I was just in awe of the entire transformation.
Oh, you got to be fucking joking. Listen. I respect the effort. I honestly do. But to say I don't think it looks dated, that's a stretch. Yes, the transformation, you can tell what they're doing practically. It looks primitive, but it also looks painful. This is effective. It's disturbing. When he's on his back and all the hair is coming out and he's contorting and he's transforming, it is clear. It is not cool to be a werewolf. This is a painful process.
I think it scared me so bad as a kid. I miss the comedy in these moments. And you already have a couple of them. Like Jack keeps decomposing. Every time you see him, he looks more and more like the guy that like leads the Tales from the Crypt. Like that's a really great sight gag. And then you've got David before he fully transforms saying, I shouldn't have called you Meatloaf, Jack. Or how they cut to the shot of Mickey, just that little figurine watching the whole thing. Like I was cracking up laughing because it's funny, but it's also really, really scary because we go from those gags to at the end of this whole sequence, there's that shot of the guy at the bottom of the escalator and the wolf just slowly comes into the picture slowly. They're in the metro station. And that when they cut back to the guy's face and he's so terrified because he knows he's about to die, like that works really well. So again, Landis is finding this perfect balance between horror and funny that I thought was really, really refreshing.
There's that amazing scene of David frolicking naked in the forest on like Kate Bush, and then he like finds a deer, and I'm like, okay, that's funny. But then we get something dumb like that machine gun attack nightmare with the crappy Halloween masks. Like at times it felt like a Savage Steve production where, you know, you got John Cusack, but instead of the claymation and the animation, you've got like bad Halloween masks and gushing blood. Those parts really turned me off.
No, but I needed those. That was where I got the first hint. This is comedy. This is a horror comedy. Until
halfway through the movie.
It was a little slow to pick up on it, but it's fucking violent. It's wild. It was unexpected. It is like a nightmare within a nightmare. It's like Inception style, okay? But it's glorious. The Nazi, werewolf, vampire, whatever these monsters are, They killed David's entire family. And it worked for me because later on when David's making the call home, I get to visualize each of the family members he's talking about because we've witnessed them murdered, gunned down, and the family home burned. This shit was fucking wild, and I appreciated it.
I don't know. It gave me flashbacks to like the biker gang in Weird Science. Maybe I just don't like mutant gangs infiltrating homes and killing everybody.
No, if the mutant gang's going to try to steal your girlfriend, yes, I agree with you. But if they had burned down the house and raped those two guys and raped Chad or something like that within that would have expected it. But this, completely unexpected.
Well, after realizing that he became a werewolf and was responsible for the previous night's murders, David unsuccessfully attempts to get himself arrested in Trafalgar Square. He goes to Piccadilly Circus, calling his family from a phone booth to say he loves them, then loses courage when he attempts and fails to slice his own wrists with a pocket knife. David then suddenly sees Jack in a yet more advanced stage of decay outside of an adult movie theater. Inside, Jack is accompanied by David's victims from the previous night, most of whom are furious with David and suggest different methods for him to commit suicide.
So I've told you before that unfortunately one of the side effects of doing a podcast is I turn into Shat Detective. Every time a movie comes on, I'm trying to sleuth it out. I'm trying to come up with what's going on, what's the big reveal, what's the twist. And I kept waiting. I kept expecting there's going to be a head werewolf. Like in The Lost Boys, where we're going to get John Lithgow is going to be like, surprise, I'm the head werewolf. I thought it was the doctor at first. I was like, okay, he's treating David. He's being very supportive, but it's obviously not him. Then when David comes back to Alex's apartment, and he's naked except for some red pea coat. And he tells her, I don't remember last night. I woke up naked in the zoo. I'm convinced it has to be her. She is going to be like some head werewolf mistress, or she's the most supportive new girlfriend in the world, because why would you deal with this?
I enjoyed having a movie without a twist, though. Like, twists are overrated. The story is complete as is. It's more about David and what David is going through. And there's no like magic way to save the day. There's no plot twist where it's not who you expected, or there's no head werewolf. It's just a straightforward story that we got to enjoy, and it was strong enough on its own.
Yeah, and because of that, you got to have like these crazy scenes that don't exist in other movies. And for me, the best scene in this film continues to be the one in the adult theater, because where you've got all these victims telling David the best ways to off himself, from the guy telling him to choke to like the really friendly, cheerful couple who's talking about how easy it would be to use a gun. Like, I kept laughing out loud through the whole thing because I do think it's really, really perfect. It's that perfect blend of gore and comedy. And then you add to that when he starts to transform in the porno, where at first it looks like he's just like coming to the scene that's on the screen in front of him. Like, that's so smart. Please tell me that you both realized how perfect this part was.
I think what I realized is you're fucking some really weird dudes. If that's what it looks like when you're coming.
No, that's the gag there. That's the gag. Nobody's like, man, that guy's in a porno theater. He must be turning into a werewolf. Like, nobody's
listen,
say that.
I've never been in one of these theaters, but if you hear a guy grunting like that in the back row of a porn theater, you do not go over and talk to him.
Not just talk to him, but like awkwardly stand in the aisle and watch. Get away.
Get away.
Don't
I'm about to
watch.
come. Get away. Get away.
It's happening.
Yeah.
And I also like how Landis like didn't stop with just some generic porno sounds on the screen. He made like a movie in the movie, right? So the porn itself is funny. Like the alleged cuckold, he bursts in, but he's in the wrong room. And then you got the naked lady just talking on the phone call with some amazing boobs. And I was just like, every little piece of this, just there was so much thought put into it.
Oh my God, I want to know more about Naughty Nina. I agree, Gene. Who is that mustached man? Why did he barge into the wrong apartment? Why did he then leave? And I got to tell you, I realized that when he comes in there, he does not join them. I was like, this has completely subverted my expectation. Because in every porn, somebody stumbles in like, hey, you want to join us? He leaves.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, he just walks out. That's great. Naughty Nina's fantastic. But this movie, it made me nostalgic. I miss the carefree days when you could hook up with somebody, leave them in your apartment, and not have a concern. As you become an adult, I found myself, I become more uptight. I'm worried, who do I leave home? Do I kind of ask him to go? How do I do this? And I appreciate the entire awkwardness of this first hookup. What?
With all the hookups that you're having nowadays?
No, what do you mean?
As an adult, how about since I got married?
Like last Saturday night, I was like, man, do I leave her here or not?
No, but what I mean is,
Do I
as
put
you...
Emma to bed first?
Oh no! How do I keep this one away from Emma? Don't talk to my daughter. No, what I mean is, as you grow, when you're younger and you're first getting established, you don't care. You don't have anything to lose. But as you get into a profession, as you start having nicer things, you start to worry more. So right now, no, this is not a problem for me. But I did remember what it was like when I was younger, when you'd pick up some random dude, not that I was a nurse, but you'd bring him back home and you'd do the tour room by room. And there's that awkward tension that you know you're going to have sex. When does it start? Oh, David, here's the shower. Here's the kitchen. Here's my bedroom.
Was that your move? Like you got a girl and you took her on a tour of your house? Like, was that a thing?
Whatever. You don't just walk in and just, whatever. Just cut me some
You're like,
slack.
hey, do you want to see my kitchen? I got a new stand mixer. Like, I mean, what kind of hookups are you having?
Yeah, by comparison, my massage move from Species is looking really good right now.
I was just about to bring that up. Gene's going to take a shower and giving him massages and, lighting candles. And you're taking him through and be like, let me tell you about the wallpaper we removed in here last weekend.
Alex pulls a Gene Lyon. She says, I'm going to take a shower. Bam! Next second, you see they're in the shower. I appreciate that. But there's no way that this leads to David screaming, Alex, I love you. Alex, I love you. Alex, I love you. And I found myself wondering, is this a satire of the superficiality of love in the 80s?
I think this goes back to the does the thought of dying make you horny discussion that we had during the In the Army Now episode, right? Ash gets stressed. She's like, I need to blow off some steam and fuck. I get emotional. Like if I think I'm going to die or I have a near-death experience, I just want to tell everyone I love them except for fuck.
I want to point out that this is not black and white. Like if like a comet is coming to hit the earth, like I'm not just like, let's go have sex. Like I probably would want to tell people I love them too, right? I'm talking about like after the fact. Like, I'm not going to be calling people crying about it. Yeah, I'm probably going to blow up some steam. But let's not make this like the end of the world is coming and Ashley's just having sex in a corner.
Meanwhile, Big D in like a crisis situation is like, hot water on demand. It's a tankless heater. Check it out.
Let me show you my sunroom.
Oh, eat shit, both of you.
Some people ask air fryer or Instant Pot. Why not both?
I'm trying to be polite.
You can set them at the same time to end at the same time. You just got to release steam in the right way.
I'm working through that awkward first moment where you both know it's going to happen. Just come
on. But we didn't take them on a tour of our apartment to get through that.
Shut up.
Just saying.
Took them to the dick room.
Dick room sounds better than a tour of your 20-something-year-old apartment, dude.
When you're Big D, every room's the dick room. David transforms into a werewolf again inside the cinema. He decapitates the inspector and wreaks havoc in the streets, causing the deaths of many drivers and bystanders. He is ultimately trapped and surrounded in an alleyway by the police. Alex runs down the alley in an attempt to calm David by telling him that she loves him. Although David's consciousness appears to recognize her for a brief moment, he lunges forward and is shot by the police. Alex cries while staring at David, reverted to human form, lying dead and naked on the ground. So far, we've praised An American Werewolf in London for its mix of comedy and horror, but I think it saves its best trick for last. Like in the end, as Werewolf David is hilariously rampaging through Piccadilly Circus, there's like buses crashing, people are being maimed, motorcycles are sliding all over the place. And I'm laughing, but I'm kind of starting to feel worried about David because you realize like he's doomed. He's going to get cornered. Like there's no happy ending here. And unlike other movies, there is no hope for a cure. There's no way to save David. And you realize that the only way this ends in his death. And then Nurse Price shows up. She's going down that alleyway. She brings out a dramatic performance out of nowhere. And I was getting emotional.
Man, I was worried throughout the whole movie. I was like, how are they going to keep this murder like rampage through London going for multiple days. How is he going to feed on people and no one notice? Even worse, I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen if David somehow escapes and makes it back to the States in like some cut scene at the end of the trailer? Some cutscene at the end of the credits, or even worse, that Alex's love will somehow allow David to control the curse, and we're going to see him transform back into human. This movie, fuck no. Thank you, John Landis. This is it. This is a story, 80-something minutes. There is no happy ending. I was thankful.
Well, and you don't get like a la Species, like, will there be a sequel? Because then they cut to like some like baby rat that, you know, all of a sudden transforms or twitches in the moonlight.
But there was a sequel.
There was another werewolf movie, but it's not a sequel. It's not related.
Shout out to Julie Delby, who's awesome in it.
Now's the time in the podcast where we give our wipe scores for An American Werewolf in London. The Shat scores are our way of telling you how many wipes this movie would take to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is hiking across the English countryside and popping in for a pint, but no food. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster of a movie, is being doomed to walk the earth as a rotting corpse until your best friend commits suicide. Ash, we'll start with you. How many wipes do you give An American Werewolf in London?
So I love this movie. I think it's held up really well over the years. It's funny. It's scary. The makeup's great. And like I said at the beginning, I argue it's the best werewolf film ever. I especially appreciate that the transformation into the wolf sucks. Like, it's painful, as it should be, because like your whole composition is changing. And like you said, Gene, like the ending's really sad. David's an awesome character. He's a lot better than that Twilight guy, Jake, or whatever his name is. And he's even better than Oz from Buffy. He's a lot cooler. And so I think he's also significantly better than whatever the fuck that Jack Nicholson wolf movie was. The movie's almost perfect. I think it's a really solid film. I'm going to give it 0.5 wipes.
The film was called Wolf. It came out in 1994, I believe.
It was literally just called Wolf?
Well, yes, that's off the top of my head. I could be completely wrong, but I'm pretty confident about that.
Wow.
This movie, I'm going to give it 0.75 wipes. I think it was light. It was entertaining. The comedy part snuck up on me. I respect what they did with the special effects, with the limited ability they had, frankly, in 1981. It was not a movie you would expect from John Landis. Is it perfect? No. But it was an entertaining night, I can guarantee, at the movies in the early 80s. And this would have been a perfect date night movie. You have a good time together, you get scared together, and then you leave and you go home and you show her your apartment. This is exactly what would have happened. 0.75 wipes.
Werewolves are horribly underserved in movies. Vampires, zombies, they get all the love. So it's not a stretch to say, Ash, you're absolutely right. This is the best werewolf movie I've seen. Although I haven't seen Teen Wolf in a long time, and I'm frankly surprised we've never done it. But American Werewolf in London, the effects are great. The characters are terrific. The mix of horror, comedy, and drama on a $5 million budget, that's nothing short of a miracle. And just for comparison, Cannonball Run cost $39 million to produce. American Werewolf in London, $5 million. My only gripe is actually that we didn't get Landis's full vision. So this isn't the fault of the director, I think. This is the fault of the studio and the fault of editing. Landis wanted more sex, more gore, and I felt like parts of this movie fell short where it was sanitized. Again, not his fault, but you can't deny this movie feels imperfect and, pardon the pun, but a bit muzzled. So for me, this is a one wiper. With my one wipe, Big D's 3/4 wipes, and Ash's half a wipe, that gives us an average wipe score for An American Werewolf in London of 0.75 wipes.
So, Gene, like you mentioned earlier, I think we're into, this is movie, I think 257, 258, somewhere in there. So if you are in the top 50 movies, I think you are some of the best of the 80s and 90s cinema. So taking that into account with a score of 0.75 wipes, that now ties this in the 32 spot with Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Platoon. It is slightly better than Beetlejuice, E.T., and Clueless, and slightly worse than Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Bull Durham, Interview with a Vampire, and The Fugitive.
Not to be petty about this, I think E.T. is a better movie. I'm going to leave it at that. E.T. is a fucking masterpiece.
E.T. is a perfect movie. Yeah, E.T. is a perfect movie.
We know why that happened. Roger.
I know. I'm just saying. That's why it's going to sound. Taking 2 shots in one pod is going to sound like I'm being petty here. But I'm just saying, E.T. is a better movie than that. But I mean, again, for a comedy horror on $5 million from 1981, like this is a miracle movie.
Yeah, I'll put on my Kevlar vest and tell everybody, listen, go back. Roger gave fucking E.T. a 2. He said there was no heart. He didn't get the story of why they love the alien. He didn't get the family connection. So, yes, E.T. is better. But what can you do? You deal with what you got.
And I think the honor here of being in the top 50 also takes on like these aren't just randomly selected movies, right? Like these are movies that people love and therefore commission. So it's already skewed in a sense. If you make it in the top 50 of the movies that people love, you're an exceptional movie. So great pick, Rob.
Totally agree.
And Big D, speaking of movies people love, what do we have in the way of voicemail?
So Gene, some of our listeners have answered the call to call in, leave a message. And our first one comes from Riley.
Hey, guys, it's your buddy, old pal, friend, Riley calling. Just, so I listened to the Scream episode. It was, honestly, if I'm being completely honest, it's probably one of your best episodes. Just, you guys kept everything, like, it just felt real. It felt like a real conversation between all of you. I agree with everything you guys said. The reason why I'm calling, actually, is because as good as it was the fucking weirdest episode you guys have done. I didn't think that you guys would talk about Scream, and then that would switch to guy getting a gerbil shoved up his ass, and then Big D, for some reason, mentioning Ash's kid jerking off, which I'm just going to say, I know from experience, if you mention stuff like that to someone with a young child, they don't like that. So when I heard Big D say that, it just really kind of, it's so awkward. And other two things, just real quick. You guys talked about Matthew Lillard and all the great movies he's done. I am very upset none of you mentioned that he played Shaggy in the Scooby-Doo movies. And also upset that you guys did not refer to David Arquette as his... I have a bad stutter, don't judge me. Anyway, I'm upset that you guys did not mention David Arquette was a former WCW world champion. Anyway, guys, love the podcast. You know I love the podcast. You guys are great. You guys take care. I'm not going to call back again apologizing like last time. This is not going to be a generic Canadian Riley. This is an anxiety-filled, ready for work, trying not to have a panic attack Riley. So you guys take... I'm actually not having a panic attack. That was actually probably bad to say. I'm rambling now. Okay, so you guys take care. Goodbye. You can edit this if you want. You don't have to air it. You aired it. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm rambling. Goodbye. Take care. I love you. Bye.
I think Riley just made the case for why you don't edit audio. Just leave everything in.
Oh, Riley, fantastic.
It's a hard decision to make when we are doing the editing. Like, what do you leave in? What do you take out? And I assure you guys that a lot of the time the edits are very, very necessary. But sometimes you get a gem like Scream where you're just like, shit, 90% of this is totally legit. We should just keep all of it. And also, as far as David Arquette goes, we also forgot to mention his incredible role in the fantastic film Ravenous that we recently covered.
Yes, without a doubt. That was the biggest oversight. That was the biggest failing in Shat The Movies history. Gene, our next voicemail comes from Rachel, who has an idea for letting people cut the line even further.
Hi, Rachel C. from Milwaukee with a new thought. It's occurred to me that since you guys are booked for commissions like into 2023, I'm wondering if that is dissuading people from, ponying up the commissions. They're like, fuck, we could be dead by March 2023. So selfishly, I am suggesting that you consider maybe a premium fast pass for bonus episodes. Like, I know how much time and work you guys put into this each week. But what would it be worth? Like, what would the minimum amount be to make you want to do a second episode in a week? Like $300, $40? I'm just thinking I would pay personally $500 to cut to the front of the line.
Wow.
And I don't mean to bump people that are already paid and scheduled. I've got 2 coming up myself. I'm saying if you're willing, in addition to those, to do a second podcast in a week. I've got a long list. I would love to do Can't Buy Me Love, Thelma and Louise, Wall Street. Actually, the whole Mike D. oeuvre has been neglected. He's got Fatal Attraction, Falling Down, Disclosure, and Basic Instinct. Which, by the way, I feel like the erotic thriller has been not receiving the representation in your podcast that it deserves. I would pay up for some Eyes Wide Shut discussion. It's not a good film, but it could provoke some stimulating discussion. So I don't want to annoy you or the listeners by suggesting this, but it might be worthwhile to consider. Thanks, guys. Oh, I gotta go. My dog's coming.
So, Rachel, I have to say, I'm glad you added that caveat that you wouldn't be bumping people, because that would be my big concern, right? Is that you're like, oh, that doesn't really solve a problem, just pushes the poor people further out, right? And I don't know that we're having like any sort of issues booking commissions, because they just keep coming in. I mean, Big D every week is just posting more and more and more of them to the calendar. But that idea of having like bonus episodes, it's always a toss up there, because with those bonus episodes time, you could also just start releasing episodes more quickly so people get their episodes sooner. A lot of people are locked into certain dates because of, special occasions, whether it's birthdays, anniversaries, or whatever. And a lot of people are, repeat or multi-commissioners like you are. And so it's a very tough one to address. Kind of behind the scenes, we've talked about like a concept of like Shat Your Pleasure, which would be exactly what you're discussing there, which would be like bonus episodes that we could release. I don't know if we'd like put a specific price tag on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to bring up. I mean, I think that it's awesome that you want to commission so many, but I think it'd be pretty cool if we could like extend like the first 5 years of the 2000s and do those as bonus episodes.
I was always down for it. I said when we got to 2020, I said that should push each year. So 2020 should be we get to go 2000. 2021, you could do a year. So each year we open up a new year into the thousands.
But Rachel just hit us with like half a dozen great movies that we haven't covered that are still squarely in the 90s,
Right, but those are like for like our weekly release. We have like Shat on the Millennium, right? So like 2000 to 2005, and we do those movies because the years 2004 and 2005 are like fucking phenomenal for movies.
Yo, listeners, if you're willing and you want to just have me on the podcast, no. I'll record as many as you want. I'll tell you about all your favorite movies. King B is also willing to do it. He'll call you on the phone and leave you a voicemail.
It'll be the darkest episodes ever.
The line is blurry because I think we have coming up is 1979 Alien. I believe also we have Jaws coming up. So, listeners, if you feel strongly about a movie, make an offer. It can't hurt.
Let's not go backwards, though, right? Let's go forwards. I mean, write in, guys. If you want us to take on, 00 to 05, right on in.
American Psycho, 2000.
I like how we've warped Rachel's entire voicemail. Rachel's like, could we get our movies sooner on bonus episodes if we pay more? And we're like, yeah, we'll do 2005.
I just want to do Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yes, this boils in again, people. Write in because there are special occasions. Some of our commissioners, like Titanic, was a bonus episode. I don't feel comfortable putting a price on it because I feel hard enough. I feel like I feel dirty asking for money for what we do, but it's a real thing. Like you think about the hours that we do dedicate. So blow us away, people. Let's go. I'm into fucking Who Wants a Modern Movie?
You're going to hear about every fucking birthday in everybody's family from now. They're like, this week is my grandma's birthday. It's this Tuesday. Please release a podcast. And on Sunday is my dog's anniversary. His favorite movie is Eyes Wide Shut.
As long as your dog's got like $400 in Venmo, I'm all for it. That's terrible. I won't include that. Don't include that. That's terrible. Yeah, so that's it. Rachel, thank you very much for the idea. Again, hit us up. We're thankful for all the support we get, and it helps us keep going, the monetary cost, and it also compensates us for the time because it is a lot of time away from our family. We do appreciate every single dollar that's donated.
And again, if you'd like to send us a voicemail, you can call us at 914-719-SHAT or email us at host@shatthemovies.com. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
My God, this is one of those films that's long overdue. Frank Drebin, a rather clueless police detective, tries to foil a plot to turn innocent people into assassins through mind control. After his partner Norberg is shot, Frank sets out to find the culprit, leading him to a business tycoon, Vincent Ludwig. However, Frank has no evidence until he meets Jane Spencer, Ludwig's assistant. She knows nothing about Ludwig's divisive plan, but falls for Frank and agrees to help him. Commissioned by Joe S., This was released in 1988, and this is a classic 80s and 90s film. I'm excited for this one.
Well, thank you, Joe, for commissioning the upcoming movie. And thank you, Rob, for your commission and your song. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat The Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media and share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat The Movies. You can email us, host@shatthemovies.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all the information by visiting our website, shatthemovies.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV, where we review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all the information on our website, shatontv.com. Wherever fine podcasts can be found, including iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe. And if you stop by iTunes, please leave a review. That helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-hosts, Big D and Ash, I'm Gene Lyons. Be sure to join us next week for the following movie.
In this city, there's crime on every street. But one man has seen enough. He's Lieutenant Frank Drebin.
Whatever scum did this, not one man on this force will rest for 1 minute until he's behind bars. Now let's grab a bite to eat.
He's a good cop who's having a bad day. His best friend...
Everyone should have a friend like you.
...is in a coma.
As soon as Nordberg is better, he's welcome back at Police Squad. But I wouldn't wait until the last minute to fill out those organ donor cards.
His girlfriend asked him to look her up.
Nice beaver.
Thank you. I just had it stuffed.
Let me help you with that.
And his city is in the hands of a master criminal with a sinister plan.
I must kill the queen.
How can any police story contain this much action? This much romance?
I like cops.
All right.
Or this much baseball? Starring Leslie Nielsen, a cop who's always on the alert. Mikhail Gorbachev.
I knew it.
Queen Elizabeth, everyone's favorite queen. Priscilla Presley, a woman who really cooks.
How hot and wet do you like it?
Ricardo Montalban.
Frank.
You're both right.
George Kennedy, the partner with an appetite for danger. O.J. Simpson, as you've never seen him before. And Reggie Jackson in his first dramatic role. In a movie so big, it had to be filmed in color. The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad.
See you then.